What if you want to put a countdown up before church starts, but you're not sure where to put it? Or you think, I'll just put it on the slides layer. Or I'll just do that with the prop. Should you do it that way? You can, but should you? Well, stick around and I'll tell you why I teach people to use the messages layer instead. Presented by Church Tech U, it's the ProPresenter show. On today's show, why I teach people not to put their countdowns on the props or slides layer and to use the messages layer instead. Hi, and welcome again to the ProPresenter show. This is the show where I teach all about ProPresenter. My name is Paul Allen Clifford. And before we get started, if you've ever put a countdown on the slides layer or on the props layer and you don't see anything wrong with that, and depending on the situation, it's not that it's like a horrible thing to do, it's just I have reasons. So I'm going to talk about those. Go ahead, tell me about it in the comments below. So, I have taught ProPresenter all over the world. In fact, as I'm recording this, I'm about to head to the Bahamas to teach a church there how to use ProPresenter. And a lot of times people will put a countdown clock on various layers. And while ProPresenter can, I think that's not the best choice. So let's head over and I'll talk a little bit about why. Okay, so what would happen if I were to put a countdown on this layer right here? It's just the regular slides layer. I can move it up to the announcement layer just by clicking on this here. Does the exact same thing, just moves it up a layer. So that really doesn't apply here. So let me right click, edit this slide, and then I'm just gonna add a text box and let's put it here at the top. And then once I do that, hide myself here, I'm gonna go to linked text and select timer and church starting here. And I could do a few little things here to tweak this. You know, I can change any of the formatting here, etc. So let's go back here and let's click on that and see what happens. Well, for some reason that didn't actually show. Oh yeah. Had that action there, so let's edit this action and let's remove it. Okay, now let's edit this slide again and select this text box. That's there. So I've got color triggers here. So let's make it kind of obvious while we're here. So let's scaling. Let's scale the text up so that it fits there, and I'm going to add a stroke on it. Okay. And I'm also going to add an action to start that, because I think that the reason it didn't show is because it's expired. That's the one I use most of the time. So I'm going to go down to timer, church starting, and just set that to start, countdown to a time. All that's good. Okay, now let's try it. There we go. So notice that that's there. Well, what happens when I either right click and add a go to next timer? So go to next timer right here. I could add that, click on it, add the amount of time and click done. I'm going to click cancel because the other thing I could do is I could do this and do that, and that will automatically change all of them. So click on that and notice this says advanced and changes, and there's the problem. Where did the countdown go away? Well, because it's on the slide layer, it is only on this slide. So that's a problem. I can get around that by putting it on each and every slide, but I just don't think that's necessary. So that's why I don't teach people to put it on the slides layer, because you have to put it on every single slide. Same thing for the announcements layer, because they're basically identical. They just shift up and down depending on which thing here in the target you have selected. So that's why I didn't do that. So that's why. Now let's talk about the props layer. Why wouldn't I do that? Well, if we go down here to the props editor in the lower right hand corner, let me hide myself here and let me create another prop. So if I didn't have any, there'd be, I think it's a down arrow right here in the middle that I could click on, or this plus button in the upper right hand corner. And let's call this countdown. Live stream, you could live stream at 720p while it separates it from some of the other competitors, and then, but you might be curious. Okay, so now let's right click and edit the slide to add that exact same thing. So we'll do that, select it, go to linked text, select the church starting timer. Okay, basically I'm going to leave that the same. I will scale the text up just so that it fits a little bit better. And now we go here and let me just click here to hide this, and now we click on that and that shows up, and when we go to any other slide, notice it stays. Even if I go to here, it stays. So that solves that problem. But it did introduce another problem, and that it might be a problem that you won't run into, but the props layer is perhaps the most overused layer, because people just default to thinking, I'm going to do something unusual, I'll use the props layer. But what if you also need to do something else unusual? So let's say that, hide myself here, I want to show a prayer request thing, but I only want to show that prayer request lower third here for the live stream. I don't want the people in person to see it. Well, I'm out of luck, because I could use looks to either show or not show the props layer on various screens, but I can't just show one prop on one screen and one on another. I mean, I admit I've got a hack, but it's a lot harder to do it than to just do what I'm about to show you. And that is, let's go ahead, we're going to hide that prop. I'm going to go ahead, right click, edit this slide, and get rid of this. And now, the way I normally teach people to do it is this way. And that is, we click on the little paper airplane, which is for the messages layer. Oops, keep hitting the wrong button. And so first I'm going to start by creating a new message. So the little plus button here, or if you don't have any messages, it'll be a big down arrow right here. Either way, might be a plus, but I think it's a down arrow. So click that, and let's church starting. And now I could just click this little add token right here, go down to timer, select the church starting timer, and then to change how it looks, I would just use a theme. And so one thing that, if you do this, one thing that's important that you don't do is there are some themes that come with ProPresenter that are countdowns. Those are more for using when you add the countdown on the slides layer. So don't use that. Just use a regular theme for regular text. So let's say I wanted to use, I'll just use this one right here. Okay. And so I've got that, and now in the lower right hand corner here, I just click on show, and that shows up. I would obviously need to reformat that a little bit differently, but it shows up there. And you'll also notice that as it's going through, it stays. In fact, if I go ahead and I hide these layers, you'll notice it's still there because it is on this layer right here, the messages layer. And people don't default to thinking, hey, I'm just going to use the messages layer for that, because it's more limited. It's not as flexible as the props layer, but it is persistent like the props layer. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get a persistent layer like the props layer, so you don't have to put it on every single slide, and you are not actually using the props layer, so you could use the props layer for something else on a screen that you didn't want to have everywhere. And most of the time, the uses of the messages layer is kind of limited. Like I can only think of 3 things that you would probably do with it. Thing number 1 is a countdown, just showed you that. Thing number 2 is maybe a number or a name from a child that needs mommy or daddy in the children's ministry. Thing number 3 is some other sort of announcement that is unplanned, like someone drives a classic car to church, you don't know who it is, but they left their lights on. Like, you could put that up in the messages layer. But normally those are going to be mutually exclusive. So you probably wouldn't run into the already using it for something else situation, because chances are the people in the children's ministry haven't given up before church starts. And chances are people haven't noticed that someone left their lights on until after church starts. And even if they did, you can wait a couple minutes until the countdown is done and then put that up there. So either way, that's what I would do right there. So that's why I teach people to use the messages layer for countdowns, not the other 2 possibilities. And I bet you'd like to know just how to do that, just in case you weren't taking notes, because I've taken notes for you. So if you head on over to tdm.fyi/progifts2606, because I'm recording this in June of 2026, you can just download my step-by-step cheat sheet on how to add a countdown timer to the messages layer. And I'll also throw in why I wouldn't do it on the other layers. Till next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out and change eternity.